Glory to God in the highest.
Hi, thanks for tuning in again to our daily inspiration. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And hopefully you'll find this video both useful and edifying. And this is certainly going to be an interesting episode, as I'm going to share about how God is preparing us for the end times here. And no, it's not going to be some shady sources, but it's something that we have seen happening already that started in 1858. And for this one, I'd like to share this clip of Father Joseph Iannuzzi with you, where he also talked about the three heavens and three earths.
Peter talks about 3 earths and 3 heavens, and Paul was taken to the 3rd heaven. How did Peter know of these 3 heavens? And he says that the first heavens and earth were done away with by the flood. The present heavens and earth are reserved for fire. And then after this purging of the earth through fire, there will be a new heaven and a new earth. That's the 3rd heaven. That's where Paul went. Certainly Paul saw it in mystical vision. And therefore, Satan is in complete submission to God's divine will. God has everything in control. Even before original sin, God had already prepared the remedy in Genesis chapter 3:15. The first proclamation of salvation. She will crush your head and you will strike at her heel. And we find that happening in Revelation chapter 12. The first book of the Bible, Genesis 3:15, the proclamation of salvation is first made. And Revelation, the last book of the Bible, chapter 12, it's fulfilled. We are living in the book of Revelation today. We are living in the fulfillment of the words of Genesis, where God will avail himself, not as he did with an angel when he defeated Lucifer, namely in the person of Michael, but now with a woman, God's masterpiece, the Blessed Virgin Mary, who has begun, when? To form her white army, her cohort to defeat Satan. When did she start this? At the same time, Leo the 13th had the vision of Satan. It all happened in the same time. The first apparition of Lord began a series of apparitions that have multiplied and not stopped since. Mary was commissioned by God to prepare the world for the end times. That was Bernadette's mission. And that was Mary's mission. And Mary continued to do that in greater and greater intensity with the exponentially increasing apparition messages and revelations at Fatima. But it all started with Lord, the first of the contemporary Marian apparitions.
And before we get to the second part of this video, where again we are going to talk a little bit more about one of the saints in the church, I'd like to share this clip here from Father Iannuzzi again.
God existed before time existed. Time began with original sin. Pope John Paul II speaks about this in his Wednesday general audiences when he spoke of phenomenology, his theology on the body. He talks about time beginning with original sin. But God goes beyond that. God created the angels before there was time. Before the earth existed, the angels existed. In fact, you can go to the book of Genesis, chapter 1. You won't find the creation of the angels anywhere, because that has to do with the creation of the material order that the creation of the angels preceded.
And so now for the second part of this video, we are going to talk about another one of the saints in the church.
Saint Hannibal. Mary di Francia was born in Messina, Italy on July 5, 1851. The third of 4 children, he lost his father when he was only 15 months old, and the sad experience of losing a parent made him deeply sensitive to the plight of children bereft of parents, and this influenced his life and his educational system. In childhood, he developed such love for the Eucharist that he was allowed to receive communion daily, something quite exceptional in those days. Hannibal proved to be of lively intelligence with remarkable literary abilities. As soon as he felt the call of God, he immediately responded by placing himself and his talents at the service of God. After his theological studies, he was then ordained a priest on March 16, 1878. With the permission and the encouragement of his bishop, he made the Avignon ghetto his home and dedicated himself completely to the redemption of its inhabitants. In accordance with the gospel, he saw them as sheep without a shepherd. It was an experience strongly marked by misunderstandings, difficulties, and obstacles of every kind, which he overcame by great faith, seeing Jesus Christ in the poor and marginalized people. He was carrying out what he defined as the spirit of a twofold charity, the evangelization of and the care for the poor. In 1882, he started his orphanages, which were called Anthonian orphanages, because they were placed under the patronage of St. Anthony of Padua. His concern was not only to provide the children with food and occupation, but above all, to assure that they were brought up in a way that integrated the moral and religious aspects of their lives, offering a family climate which helped lead them to discover and follow God's plan for them. With his missionary spirit, he wanted to reach out to the orphans and the poor all over the world. And he wrote this: "What are these few orphans we attend to? These few people we bring the good news to, compared to the millions who are lost and abandoned as sheep without a shepherd." I looked for an answer, and I found a complete one. In the words of Jesus, "Ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers to gather his harvest." I concluded then that I had found the secret key to all good works and to the salvation of all souls. To carry out his apostolic ideals in the church and in the world, he founded two religious congregations, the Daughters of Divine Zeal in 1887 and the Rogationists 10 years later. He wanted both institutions to live the Rogate as a fourth vow. The institutions were canonically approved on August 6, 1926. In a petition to St. Pius X in 1909, Father Hannibal stated, "From my small institutes, an unceasing daily prayer is raised by the orphans, the poor, the priests, and the consecrated virgins to the most sacred hearts of Jesus and Mary, to Saint Joseph and the apostles, that they may abundantly provide the church with holy and chosen priests and with evangelical workers for the spiritual harvest of souls." To spread the prayer for vocations, he promoted several initiatives. He had personal epistolary contacts with the popes of his time. He instituted a Holy Alliance, a movement of prayer for vocations intended for the clergy, and the pious union of the evangelical rogation for all the faithful. He published the periodical God and Neighbor to involve everyone in these ideals. "The entire church must formally pray for this aim," he wrote, "because the purpose of the prayer to gain vocations must concern all the faithful, every Christian who has at heart the good of souls, and, in a particular way, the bishops who are the shepherds of the spiritual flock, and to whom souls are entrusted. They are the living apostles of Jesus Christ today." His love for the priesthood was great. He strongly believed that the world could be redeemed only through the work of many holy priests. That is why he was deeply concerned with the spiritual formation of the seminarians entrusted to him by the Bishop of Messina. He used to say that without a lot of prayer and a solid spiritual training, all the efforts of bishops and of seminary educators would only result in artificial priests. He strove to become himself a model of the good laborer of the Gospels, and to be a priest according the heart of Jesus. His charity knew no bounds and was directed towards all kinds of people in need, including priests facing difficulties and cloistered nuns. Even when he was still alive, his reputation as a saint was widespread on all levels. When he died in Messina on June 1st, 1927, people began to say, "Let us go to see the sleeping saint." He died comforted by the vision of the Blessed Virgin Mary, whom he had loved so much during his life. His funeral, according to the chronicles and pictures in the newspapers of that time, became a triumph. Civil authorities promptly granted permission for his burial in the shrine of the evangelical rogation, which Father Hannibal himself had built in Messina and wanted to be dedicated to the command of the gospel. "Ask, therefore, the Lord of the harvest to send workers into his harvest." The religious families founded by St. Hannibal are currently present on all the continents. According to the ideals of their founder, they dedicate themselves to spreading the prayer for vocations through centers for vocations, publishing houses and printing presses, institutions for orphans and abandoned children, schools for deaf and mute, nutritional centers, homes for aged, homes for single mothers, and professional and vocational schools.
Well then, that will be all for the video this time. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And hopefully all of you have learned a lot from this video. And remember, if there's any feedback or suggestion, please don't hesitate to let us know in the comments below. And until the next one, thanks again for watching and may God bless you.